The Underworld, a brief explanation. Number 1, the Greeks believed in an afterlife, and everyone's soul went to the underworld after death. So if you have grown up in America, it would be pretty difficult to not have encountered the idea of heaven and hell, even if you're not a Christian, even if your particular religious beliefs or non-beliefs do not agree with that. You see heaven and hell in comic books, cartoons as we're growing up, in stories. It's often talked about. So we have to kind of break our knowledge, our previous knowledge of those ideas when it comes to studying Greek mythology, because the underworld is not hell. Everyone, after they died, the Greeks believed that everyone's soul went to the underworld, whether they were a hero, a good person, someone who had done bad things in life. Everyone was going to the underworld. It was just where the afterlife was contained. So, number 2, Hades rules over the underworld, and the underworld is also sometimes called Hades. Hades, the god, is not necessarily terrible. He is just surrounded by death, so many other gods dislike and avoid him. He is a greedy god, so he wants to gather as many souls as he can in his realm. So again, it's important that you do not equate Hades with Satan or the devil in our American culture and how we would see that here. He's not a terrible god. He just is in charge of that particular place, the underworld. Number 3, life in the underworld is described by the website GreekMythology.com as being, quote, not particularly unpleasant. It is rather like a miserable dream full of shadows without sunlight or hope, a joyless place where dead slowly fade to nothingness. Number 4, when a person died in ancient Greece, family members were responsible for following rituals to ensure his or her safe passage to the underworld. The Greeks also believed that if the living did not properly bury their deceased loved ones, the gods would punish them too. The family would put a coin on the deceased person's tongue. They would also use herbs, position the body a certain way, and build a pyre for the body. Hermes would lead the person's soul to the entrance of the underworld, and the coin would be used to pay Charon to cross the river Styx or Acheron, myths vary, on the ferry. So Charon was a person in the underworld who ran the ferry, a little boat that would get you across the river Styx and therefore into the underworld. But you had to pay Charon in order for that to happen. If the family did not have a coin, the soul of their loved one would have to search, sometimes for years, for the pauper's entrance. A pauper is someone who is poor. So if you don't have money, then you're searching, your soul is searching and searching forever, possibly, to try to get into the underworld. Their soul would be trapped between the two worlds of the living and the dead. There are actually 5 rivers in the underworld. Styx is the river of hatred. Acheron is the river of pain. Lethe is the river of forgetfulness. Phlegethon is the river of fire, leads to the depths of Tartarus. Cocytus is the river of wailing. The souls of the dead remain as they were in life forever. So if someone died on the battlefield, he would spend eternity in his bloody clothing. Souls do not progress in the underworld. They have no purpose. They serve only as a reminder of the person who once lived. The soul would then go before a panel of judges, and their names are here, who would pass judgment and decide where the soul will go. So here are the places that a person could end up in the underworld, because remember, every soul goes to the underworld. So first, A is Tartarus, the darkest and worst place. It's said to be deep below the underworld, sometimes not even considered a part of the underworld. Zeus cast the Titans and Cronus to Tartarus after defeating them. Tantalus and Sisyphus carry out their eternal punishments in Tartarus too. Remember, Tantalus is in water and there is fruit hanging above his head, but every time he goes to drink the water, it recedes, and every time he tries to reach the fruit, he cannot reach it. And Sisyphus is our character who pushes a boulder up a mountain and then it rolls back down. And then he has to push it back up a mountain and it rolls back down. And these punishments happen for eternity. The second place that a soul could go would be the fields of punishment. This is a place for those who lived, quote, bad lives, committed crimes, or offended the gods. The third place is Elysium, or the Elysian Fields, a place for the very good, heroes, warriors who died bravely. Few humans could make it to Elysium. This is one of the reasons why the Greeks were willing to go to war. Only those who died an honorable death and who had shown courage had a chance to go to the Elysian Fields. This is comparable to the Christian or cultural idea of heaven, an easy afterlife and no labor. There was a chance to get to eternal paradise, the Isle of the Blessed. To get there, a person in Elysium would have to be reborn and make it back to Elysium 3 times. This means that a person would have to live 3 extraordinary and heroic lives in order to get to the Isle of the Blessed. And then D, Fields of Asphodel or Meadows of Asphodel, is a place for regular people's souls. So if a person wasn't particularly bad in life and they weren't a hero or extraordinary, there still needed to be a place for their soul to go. So this would be where most people's souls, regular people's souls, would end up, are the Fields of Asphodel. Other gods and characters live in the underworld too, besides Hades. You know that Persephone is the wife of Hades, not by her choice. You can read that story if you don't remember how she became his wife. The Furies, or Earines, carried out vengeance for those who had been harmed. They were ugly winged women with bodies intertwined by serpents. Humans lived in fear of the Furies coming to seek revenge for wrongdoing. If a murderer was still alive, for example, the Furies would inflict madness on him or her. If a community was harboring a fugitive, hiding a criminal, the Furies would inflict starvation or disease on everyone. Hermes is the messenger god. Hermes travels between the human world and the underworld. He transports souls to the underworld. He doesn't live in the underworld, he just visits. The judges, there are 3 of them, look at the life of the deceased person. Look at the life the deceased person lived and decide where their soul should go in the underworld. So a lot of people think that's Hades, like you stand before Hades, your soul does, and that Hades makes that decision. But there are actually 3 judges who were making those decisions. Charon, as discussed above, is in charge of ferrying the souls of the dead across rivers to get into the underworld. Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, guards the gates of the underworld. He lets souls in, but he does not let anyone out. And then finally, just remember that Hades, the god of the underworld, is considered to be one of the most hospitable gods. That's because he always welcomes new souls to the underworld. For your test, I would say that you should generally know the concepts of the areas of the underworld, especially Tartarus and the Elysian Fields. And you should know who Hades is and all of these characters, and understand that the Greeks believed that everyone's soul eventually went to the underworld.